Oh, I didn't want to get into sales. I'm sure a lot of people answer that way. I was working at a job at Penn State that I stuck with for the year after I graduated. And Penn State is actually in State College, Pennsylvania, which is absolutely nothing going on if you're not in school. And so I had a roommate that started working at this company I'd never heard of called Corporate Executive Board, or CEB. She called me up one day and said, "You've got to come work for this company. Super bright people, lots of fun." And I was like, that's it, I'm sold. And so I moved and I took the job because I just really wanted to get out of central Pennsylvania. But what kept me in sales from the get was I was lucky enough to have an amazing, amazing manager. And she just had a force of presence unlike any other. And at the time, we were selling sort of subscriptions to best practice research to C-level executives. Our group was to selling to CMOs. And I just remember sitting there in like the first couple of weeks of being employed and hearing her talk to like the CMO of Walmart and the CMO of Pepsi. And just, like I said, she had such a force of presence. She was totally unafraid to push their thinking and engage with them in these really smart conversations. And I was just enamored with her. And I said, I want to be that one day. And so that's really what kept me in sales, was her. I mean, I'm going to flip the script and say it's actually usually the seller that is my pet peeve, not the buyer. I feel for buyers. I feel like they are just some of the nicest, kindest people with what they put up with. For me, it is the misunderstanding what discovery is and leading a conversation where we are just totally self-centric and thinking about, do you have budget? Do you have authority? Do you have a need? Do you have a timeline? Like a BANT style discovery to me is just the bane of all salesmanship. So what I cannot stand is when a seller is completely self-motivated in the time that they're spending with a customer to decide, what can I get out from this, instead of looking at the buyer and saying, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Let's think together about how we fix it. I love this question. I have made every mistake in the book when it comes to selling to buying teams. So my number one piece of advice would be seek disagreement. Don't seek agreement. And what I mean by that is we work so hard in these large buying groups to get to the point at which we have the opportunity to present to them, right? And you get that meeting and you're so excited and you prep everything and you look at everybody's roles and responsibilities. And then we as salespeople, I think, naturally show up and we're trying to convince everybody to buy the solution. I think what that does is it alienates you from the group, because all of a sudden you're someone on the outside trying to push a decision onto a group of people that more than often totally disagree about the problem they're solving, what they should do to solve it, who they should solve it with. And so instead, what I would recommend is view your role as almost like a third-party facilitator, right? Go into the meeting, hold up a mirror and say, in the conversations that I've had with some of you, not all of you, here is how I've interpreted the problem statement. Now let's agree and disagree on that right from the get. Like, is this even the right problem we should be solving? And almost tell me why that is. And I think what we find a lot of times is when we start with the problem and we open up the forum for disagreement. I have this on so many deals where I've got a portion of the buying group who's saying, we have a new logo acquisition problem. And then I've got another portion of the group saying, no, it's customer retention. And when you come in and you help the group norm around these differences, they view you as additive value to that conversation. As opposed to if I come in and I'm like, buy this thing that I have to sell you, they view you as a distraction. And so I think that is our biggest opportunity, is to be comfortable seeking disagreement, not go in and just try to convince everybody to buy, but actually help them make sense of the problem. What I find is when I do that well, they invite you back and back and back and back, because you're part of the solution, not just part of, making a sale. Okay. I would say stop trying to handle it, right? Every objection is a piece of information. It gives us a signal as to something that is missing from that buyer. So if the buyer says, I don't have enough time, or it's too expensive, that immediately triggers in my mind, there's something that I probably failed to do in how I positioned this. And if I'm focused on trying to handle it, it creates this offense-defense dynamic between me and the buyer. And guess who's going to win that 100% of the time? It's the buyer, right? Because they hold the cards. And so what I want to do is, instead of handling it, which feels like me telling someone, no, your feelings aren't valid, and no, what you're saying is wrong because of X, Y, and Z, I use that as an opportunity to go back to discovery and say, okay, so help me understand. When you say it's too expensive. What are you comparing this to? Or when you say it's too expensive, is there something else that has, increased in priority since we first spoke? And I think when we look to just learn instead of trying to fix, right? It's like when we get advice from our spouse or our friends, it's like, sometimes I don't need you to just fix it. I just need you to listen and I need you to evolve. That I think is something we as sellers fail to do oftentimes, just show up like a human being. So that would be my number one piece of advice. Don't try to handle it. Just try to listen to it. Try to learn something. There's a piece of information in there that will help you. This is my favorite tip for SDRs, for AEs, for anybody who wants to get attention is we talk a lot about personalization or relevance. I am very much in the camp of relevance, right? I will forgo, hey, I saw you went to X college, go Bears, whatever. That's not for me. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's just not my style. What I am very much about is getting right to business to say, I've spent the time. I genuinely am reaching out to you because there is something about your business that intrigues me. And so what I will do and what I advise people to do all the time is type the company's name that you're chasing, and then do a plus sign, and then the CEO's name, and then another plus sign in either podcast or the word interview. Google that, and what you'll find is, in most cases, I don't care if it's public, private, big, or small, CEOs are out there publicly talking about their businesses. And we can learn so much about current state if we just take the time to do that. And so what I'll do is I'll rarely watch it, the whole thing, but I'll look at the transcript, or I'll go to the middle. And then I'll pull out, what is that company trying to do? How does that CEO think they need to do it? And then what problem can I ascertain they may be misunderstanding in their pursuit of trying to get from A to B? And then I'll pull that into my email. So when I send an email, my subject line will actually be the CEO's name and comments, right? Because if someone had emailed the CEO's name and comments to me, I'd be like, are they talking bad about me? Do I need to, what did I do? It sparks the open. But then once they open it, I'm getting right to, CEO spoke about how Acme Company is trying to do X. And it looks like, from what I can tell, you're trying to do that by Y. I'm curious, have you ever explored how this thing over here affects your ability to do Y? Are you open to a conversation? And I'm not saying it's the perfect email. I'm not saying it's a silver bullet, but what I can feel really good about is that buyer knows that I've taken the time to express an interest and a curiosity in their business. And sometimes I think it's really just that easy. It's like, just show you give, what about this business. And at least I think that that buyer will respond and just say, thank you for taking the time to actually learn about what we do, because most sellers don't do that. Oh, I would say stop being so serious. Like, your idea of what professionalism is from the 1950s. And that's why I'm really excited, particularly about this world that we're in now, where you have creators. So I know you had Will Aiken on the show. I think Will is just iconic in his ability to actually be really smart and credible and teach, but have fun doing it. And if I look back to when I started selling 18 years ago, I had this imagery in my mind of the professional seller is in a suit and they use these big buzzwords and they take no prisoners and there always be closing, right? And I was trying to be that, but that is so against who I am as a person. And I remember, I talk about this a lot, there was a woman I was meeting with that was a customer, and I was running my, my script of what I thought I was supposed to say about this problem that she shared, and she stopped me and she said, Jen, what do you personally think about this problem? And it threw me off, and she knew it. It's why she asked the question. And I told her, I was like, I believe in what I said. And she said, it doesn't come across that way. It comes across as really inauthentic. I would encourage you to bring your own point of view and your perspective. I'm interested because you talk to other people that have my job in what you think. And that was one of those pivotal moments where I look back and I'm so grateful she made me uncomfortable, because then I really leaned into who I was. So I think in a world and a function, a profession where we are just chasing, not being commoditized, the very one thing you can't commoditize is you and your story and how you tell it. And so I would always encourage sellers, if you felt the same way I did, knock that down. You will start to see tremendous results when you just truly bring you into the equation, as cheesy as that sounds.